Mr. Christie, Happy New Year, sir.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you, my friend. You're having a great race so far. How does it feel so far? Like, are you enjoying the process or what?
Oh, always enjoy the process.
What's the thing that you learned during this whole run that, that's kind of new for you?
You always learn all the time by listening to the people that you campaign in front of. So I learn all the time.
Does it ever get too dirty during the debates or no?
No, it hasn't been bad.
Like, but is that part, do you go in there with a routine or jokes at all, or?
No, I just go in and listen and answer the questions.
Who do you think your biggest, toughest person, your biggest competitor during it?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump?
Sure.
What about Nikki Haley? I feel like she's been getting some steam lately. Do you think it's a media thing, or do you think she's just...
I guess we'll find out when people start to vote.
Robert Kennedy Jr., do you think he still even has a shot?
No.
No. Listen,
Thank you.
Hey, you're doing a great job. I appreciate this.
I've spent 40 years thinking about what would happen. How do you fix these broken agencies? How do you end the corruption and to stop the predatory relationships that they now have with the American people? And, a lot of politicians get in and make that promise, and they get in there and they start acting like the last guy. And you say, what happened to this person? And I can tell you that will never, ever happen to me. And I'm going to fix it. And I can't do it alone. I need an army. I need all of you to help me get this done. And right here in Arizona, what I need is I need people to go out and help us get 43,000 signatures as fast as we can get them. I said this in Boston, and I'll say it to you tonight. You give me a sword and some ground to stand on, and I will win your country back for you. Thank you all.
I love you, Bobby. We love Bobby. I love Bobby. Woo! I love Bobby.
I love Bobby!
I love Bobby.
I love Bobby.
We love Bobby.
I love Bobby. Let's go for it, Bobby. You can do it.
Let's welcome in former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor, thanks for joining us this morning. So what do you make of this news? How do you expect this to affect the Georgia prosecution?
Well, given how ridiculous this whole case has gone, I doubt it'll affect it at all. But it should affect it by having her disbarred and all the charges dropped. This is absurd, to pay $500,000 to apparently her boyfriend so that they can go after Donald Trump. I can't imagine that any fair-minded judge would look at this case and say, yeah, this is all on the up and up. But given what President Trump has been through in the legal system, where it's not about what's right, what's wrong, what's legal, what's not legal, it's all about if it's Trump, let's go get him. If it's not Trump, heck, we don't care. Let Joe Biden, let Democrats do whatever they want. Not a problem. We'll look the other way. But this is a huge scandal, and I hope there's somebody fair-minded in Georgia that will go after it.
Yeah, Governor, what a plot twist. So this private attorney turned special prosecutor, his name is Nathan Wade. He's been paid a little more than $650,000 so far in legal fees, authorized by Fani Willis, his girlfriend, to go after Donald Trump. They've taken luxury 5-star vacations together, and I think if you're a fair-minded judge, and you look at that, this woman here, Fani Willis, of course she wants to keep the prosecution going, because as long as her office is paying her boyfriend, they can continue to go on these crazy vacations. If you read the details here, like 5-star, 5-diamond, all expenses paid vacations, and the prosecution goes on, and he bills her office every single month.
Must be nice.
Yeah, what's really sad about this, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, so she's got a sugar daddy, he's got a sugar mama, let's just have some more sugar. But the sugar is being paid for by the taxpayers. That's what makes this so scandalous. This isn't just private money that came from some hedge fund. This is money that came right out of the pockets of hardworking people in Georgia who thought that they were paying for a prosecutor to adequately, fairly, justly, and objectively prosecute crime. This is a political operative who has decided that she's going after Donald Trump Doesn't matter whether Donald Trump has any real culpability in Georgia. She just hates Donald Trump. So let's use the taxpayer money to do it. And while we're at it, why don't maybe she and her boyfriend take some really expensive vacations? After all, the chumps of Georgia, those taxpayers, they're going to pay for it. Won't bother us a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Governor,
seems
elections
so.
have consequences. We say it all the time, but the people of Georgia, the good people of Georgia, by the way, this is who they elected. This is your district attorney. This is who they want representing them. And you're right. Not only should she be disbarred, but she should lose her job over this egregious conflict of interest. And any fair-minded judge should toss the case based on that fact alone. We'll see what happens. I want to move on to a state that you know well, the state of Iowa. You won it in 2008. The caucus is now 6 days away. Look, Governor, I get it. No one wants to talk about weather, and no one wants to make this an issue. If it was snow, I wouldn't even ask you the question. The high temperature forecast on Monday in Iowa is -2. That's the high. So the low, by the way, is -11. That could change, but it's not going to change by much. Does that play a role in turnout? And if you think it does that affect Donald Trump negatively or positively?
Well, it could affect all the candidates. It's all about enthusiasm. It's always about enthusiasm because you have to not just go and vote. You don't get to do an absentee ballot. Nobody comes to your house to collect your ballot. You have to leave your house, go to a school, a church, someplace that's a caucus site. You have to trudge through snow, park your car out in the middle of nowhere, walk into that building, and be prepared to be there for several hours. So this is not for the faint of heart. And that's what people may not understand about caucuses. It's for the very enthusiastic voters. So here's the question. Whose voters care enough that they will get out in that kind of weather and brave it for 2 or 3 hours and take a public stand in front of their neighbors and the people they go to church with and say, I'm voting for Donald Trump, or I'm voting for Ron DeSantis, or Nikki Haley,
or Mike Huckabee,
because they have to publicly declare.
She is known for not putting up with any of Larry David's antics as his ex-wife on Curb Your Enthusiasm. But outside of acting, she is a mother hustler with her eye on becoming the first lady.
Yeah.
Cheryl Hines is here to talk about her new business and more. Hey, Cheryl. Great to see you. Happy New Year, and I got to sample all your goodies earlier. We've got some of your Hines and Young self-care products here. We got the candle, the soap, the lip balm, and I have to tell you that pillow spray, I want to use that on my pillow.
That's my secret go-to.
So what inspired you to get into business with your daughter, Kat?
So my daughter Kat is 19, and she was about to go off to school, and I wanted to keep her close to me and at the same time do something productive and fantastic. So we decided to start this line together, and we love fancy things, but we wanted to create a luxurious line that was affordable for most people. So we came up with Hines and Young, and it's a it's all about feeling good and relaxing and taking care of yourself. This is our body cream, and we have these beautiful candles that I love. And then we have little candles that you can take with you anywhere you go.
Smart.
I call them the boyfriend candle.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. And all your products are plastic-free and inspired by the beach, right? Which makes sense. What's your favorite product? It's like choosing your favorite kid, right?
I know, it's impossible, but I really love, we have 4 different fragrances that are beach-inspired. My favorite right now is Capri Honeymoon, and it's so beautiful. Yeah. And I just, I light a candle every chance I get and just relax. Try to relax for a moment.
For half a second. And it's so dry here in Denver, and if you notice, under my nose is dry.
And red.
I'm using your very emollient balm under my nose. And it smells good. Yeah.
It smells good, and you smell good, and you can take it anywhere you go. That's what I love about it.
I like that it's plastic-free, too. Your husband, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is running for president. I wanted to know what you look forward to most if you become the new First Lady. And you'd be one rad First Lady. Is she
No!
frozen or not wanting to talk about it?
Froze.
I thought I crossed the line. The publicist said, do not ask that question.
Oh, God, don't say that.
No, we got to get her back because I have a Curb Your Enthusiasm question.
Oh, wait, they're
she's
working
back.
on it.
All right.
They're
Okay,
working.
working
She's
on it.
back. She's back,
All right.
everybody.
Okay.
She's back.
I was going to ask you what you look forward to most as becoming First Lady, as you'd be a rad one if you were to become one.
Well, I would really like for people to come together and stop looking for the bad in each other and start looking for the good. To just come together as a nation. Doesn't matter what political party you're affiliated with. Just let's be good to each other and be kind to each other.
Nice.
And figure out what we have in common.
Nice.
All right. Well, speaking of being kind to each other, your husband, Bobby Kennedy, gave your daughter a pet emu. Okay? Now, I would say that is being kind.
Oh my God.
But why did you then make him choose between you or the pet emu? Like, talk to us.
Yeah, well, this emu would run around the yard like attacking, and the final straw, I was trying to pitch a film over the phone, and I'm running around the backyard being chased by the emu, and I don't want to tell the person on the other end that I'm being chased by an emu because that sounds crazy.
Yes.
So by the time Bobby got home, I said, listen, it's me or the emu. Something's got to give.
I think that's
so we
fair.
no longer have the.
I hear that sounds exactly like a Curb episode, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
And it's so surreal talking to you because I went to sleep with you last night.
What?
Not with you. I was watching Curb Your Enthusiasm like I do every night. It was when you had the threesome. It was super funny. It was so funny. I love that episode. Anyways, Curb Your Enthusiasm is returning for its final season next month. I'm so sad. What can we expect? Is Larry going to die like originally planned? Will you please break up with Ted Danson already and get back with Larry?
Seriously.
There are so many questions I'd love to answer. However, I can't.
No.
You're gonna have to watch. You're gonna have to watch with everybody starting in February. But it's gonna be a really great season.
We can't wait.
I
And it's
can't wait.
right around the corner.
Can't wait for that.
Cheryl,
Pillow
thank you
mist.
so much for joining us today. DBL Nation, for more information about Cheryl and her daughter Kat's new line of self-care products, visit shopheinzyoung.com. Thank you again, Cheryl. Happy New Year.
Biden approval rate among black voters has declined from 87% in 2021 to just 62% in 2023. And he's trying to win them back on the campaign trail. Watch.
White supremacy. All it is a poison throughout our history. It's ripped this nation apart. This has no place in America. Not today, tomorrow, or ever.
Here he goes with that again, all while even fellow Democrats are expressing concern over whether he could even beat Donald Trump.
Well, I'm not worried. I'm very concerned, and I've told him what my concerns are. I have no problem with the Biden administration and what it has done. My problem is that we have not been able to break through that MAGA wall.
And new this morning, Democrats pouring major cash, $35 million to Black, Latino, Asian American, and Pacific Islander voters in the 2024 election. Here to react, Republican voter Dorothy Hart and Democrat voter Jason Brown. Thank y'all so much for joining me on the program. Dorothy, I met you in Georgia before. You were fired up. And are you still supporting Donald Trump? And if you are, why?
Yes, I am still supporting Donald Trump, and here's why. The black voters realizing now that Biden has failed this administration. He has the prices of gas and everything is so expensive. And I spoke with some of the black voters yesterday, and they said that everything was better under the administration of Donald Trump. So they look forward to going back to the Republican Party and voting for Donald Trump because they said Biden has failed us. They said Biden did not deliver on anything he promised. And they feel like President Trump can relate to the black community more than Biden. And so that's why I'm supporting Trump.
Miss Dorothy, I've heard some similar comments. Jason, you're a Democrat. What are you hearing from folks within the party? Do you think Joe Biden has what it takes to win black voters over?
I think that he has some of the democracy to win voters over. The fact that he did address the plague of the white supremacy and how it has affected America from day one is something that we haven't heard from many of our presidential candidates or many presidents other than Joe Biden. So one of the things that I feel like he can do is galvanize the community. Right now, we're still holding on to our vote. We're looking for someone, if it's not going to be Joe Biden, somebody that's going to help the community, not only help us with the educational system, but also help with some of the rising taxes as well.
Roger that, brother. Miss Dorothy, I want to go back to you because I'm live here at our southern border. And when you look at the studies that have been brought out saying over 60% of the migrants coming across the border are receiving welfare, and people in our community aren't even getting services. They're being let down. The financial system is not being beneficial. Our education system is broken. So what are you hearing from people in our community about that?
Yes, some of the people I spoke to yesterday, they said that they feel like when Trump was in the White House, we had the borders more secure, and Biden had letting the border got out of hands and a mess, and they just kind of like Biden don't really care about the American people. He say he does and pretend like he does, but he really don't. They feel like they can relate to President Trump because President Trump did have the border under control. And they want better. And they tired of the malarkey, they tired of the BS and all that stuff that they feel like they've been going through with. So that's why they wanted to.
Such a good point, Ms. Dorothy. Jason, what about what Ms. Dorothy is talking about? The community wants more. And it seems like illegal migrants have become a priority, and our community hasn't been such a priority. What do you say to that?
That's true to a certain extent. I mean, America's always going to be a place where people seek refuge, that come in to pursue the quote American dream. So we created a system where people look to come here. Now all of a sudden we're kind of, I guess, upset or mad about that. What we have to do as a country is put in place policies and procedures that would allow those people that are coming here to help us. Right now, some of the lower working class jobs that some Americans used to do back in the day because they've now got educated or now become entrepreneurs of their own, we're needing people to replace some of the working class everyday citizens. My issue is that we're not putting a process in place so they can be formally implemented into the working class, so that we do have people that can come in and do some of the jobs like I need, like dishwashers and servers and cooks. Those are technical skills that some of the American kids are starting to kind of shy away from. They're more content creators. They're more, into the tech world. So we need laborers. We need workers. So if we got a process in place that we can allow those people to come in, get acclimated, and come in and do some work. Now, when it comes to governmental benefits, I don't think that an immigrant should come in here and just take over and get all the benefits in the world.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that as well, Jason. I think a lot of Americans want anybody to come to the country as long as they're doing it the right way. Jason, Miss Dorothy, thank y'all so much for joining the program.
Thank you for having us.
Rumors are swirling about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s possible VP pick, and former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, has she entered the chat? One user posted, a source with connections to the Robert Kennedy Jr. campaign has told my ex-group of Kennedy 24 supporters that his rumored VP announcement date happens to coincide with his trip to Honolulu, Hawaii. Now, if this tidbit is true, then we can absolutely expect and assume Tulsi Gabbard will be the vice presidential choice of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. With her embrace of the center right these last few months, this very well could be a safe move for the Kennedy campaign. But just this morning, Gabbard announced a new partnership with Twitter or X. Let's watch.
Free speech is something that a lot of us have taken for granted throughout our lives. It is fundamental to our rights that we have as Americans. Unfortunately, we live in a time where free speech is under attack. Lifting up your voice in dissent or challenge or questioning or even having a dialogue and debate is not only discouraged, it can be cause for retaliation or cancellation or censorship. We must defend our right to free speech.
Now, RFK Jr. continues to be a crow on the side of both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, as he seems to be the strongest third-party candidate since Ross Perot. While former President Trump still leads Biden overall, in Arizona, RFK has a respectable 10% support, in Florida 9%, in North Carolina 11%, and in Michigan 9%. RFK is even putting up solid numbers in places where Biden leads. In Virginia, RFK Jr. has 14% approval. Those numbers come from both Biden and Trump, as without RFK Jr. in the race, Trump and Biden both gain 7% support. So he's stealing equally from both candidates there. But the big news here is a potential Tulsi Gabbard VP. Let me put this to you. I understand why that would be very exciting to the 10% of the public that already likes RFK Jr. Is it broadening the coalition at all to pick someone who is so kind of occupying the same online and rhetorical space, a lot of issue overlap with respect to some of the independent COVID critiques of the deep state type moves, critiques of war? Very, very similar space. Is it actually going to improve his chances and generate excitement here?
Look, I see what you're saying. There is so much overlap. One wonders if it's a missed opportunity to bring in new people. But Tulsi Gabbard, extremely popular with a lot of conservative voters, audiences, et cetera. She's on Fox News a lot. I believe she's a Fox News contributor now. She's well known to the right. She obviously comes before that from the Bernie Sanders left, from your own worlds. She has, I think, a number of political positions that are, she might not see it that way, but you would probably see as very estranged from those views. So I don't know that would bring in all that many people from the left, but I could see her peeling off some Trump-type people, frankly. There's a lot of love for her in conservative media. I think going beyond what was just obviously there was appreciation for RFK Jr. in conservative media when it looked like he was just kind of hurting Biden from within the Democratic coalition. As soon as he moved out, that it was like, whoa. Remember what this guy said about the Second Amendment? Remember how he feels about environmental regulation? I don't know. Tulsi is pretty beloved. And she might get some favorable coverage. And then obviously I do think it seems like they're pretty in sync on where RFK Jr. wants to focus now on COVID tyranny and mandates. Frankly, even their foreign policy seems kind of in sync with the, non-intervention on Ukraine, but a full-throated defense of Israel.
Yeah, exactly. That cuts both ways, because I do think that Tulsi Gabbard might get more scrutiny for her, frankly, inconsistent views on Israel. She brands herself as someone who's against the warmongers, who's against money flowing out of the door to these regime change wars, is what she often calls and often talks to them about, but feels very differently about Israel. Much like RFK Jr., Max Blumenthal has challenged Tulsi Gabbard to a debate on the issue of Israel-Palestine, which she has declined to take up on. And I do think that once she's in the spotlight, it might draw more attention to the inconsistencies within RFK Jr.'s own political program that drove so many people on the left who once supported him away, just like so many people on the left who once supported Tulsi Gabbard have changed their mind as she's kind of reinvented herself politically.
I think this will further drive away people on the left if they were interested in RFK Jr. I think that was kind of happening anyway, given that there are other more down the line left kind of people in the race, either within the Democratic side, like Marianne Williamson and Cenk Uygur, or the Green Party candidate, or Cornel West. There's a lot of places for the really left person to go for this, heterodox, some formerly left views maybe, very concerned about COVID, this foreign policy view taking from the right. I think this is actually a strong move to lean into that strategy. And I could see the RFK Tulsi ticket pulling even more from the right. Now, we should say this is just a rumor. It's a good rumor. If he's going to announce while he's in Hawaii, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know that Tulsi is actually signing up to do this because, like I said, she has a a Fox News deal. She's just announced this partnership with Twitter that we just played that clip of. So that doesn't sound like gearing up for another foray into politics, but anything's possible.
So many presidential candidates get this accusation lobbed at them. Is this just about a book deal? So many presidential candidates do have books coming out. So, those things aren't mutually exclusive. Yeah. Campaigns are expensive. You have to fund them. Not everyone is a billionaire candidate like a Bloomberg or a Steve Phillips even is, I think, a billionaire. If not Dean Phillips, not a multi-millionaire. I'm pretty sure he's a billionaire. So that's not such a criticism. Mm-hmm. But if this just is a branding exercise, it's such a good branding exercise. If I were judging this just on optics as opposed to whether or not it expands the political coalition, I'd give it an A+. So I am scrutinizing it from that perspective. It is also worth noting, focusing on the new deal with Twitter X, and we'll talk about this in more depth in a different segment, but Twitter is under significant criticism for launching a purge against left-leaning accounts that have been very, very critical, large accounts that have been critical of U.S. foreign policy with respect to Israel. 4 or 5 of those accounts got blocked last night, and what seems to some people like a coordinated effort that's out of step with the values of Twitter. Again, we'll talk about that in a different segment, but Glenn Greenwald and others who have been very consistent on the speech issue are raising questions about whether or not this issue is the red line that frankly exposes so much of the rhetoric about having an investment in free speech as exactly that, just rhetoric.
Yeah, we're going to delve into more of that a little bit later on the show, and we will have more Rising right after this.
Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis addressed Donald Trump and the ballot rulings during a virtual town hall last night hosted by Gray TV. KCRG TV9's state capitol reporter Connor Hendricks explains why DeSantis disagrees with the decisions made against Trump.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says the former president being taken off the ballot in Maine and Colorado was wrong. DeSantis says he has concerns about a lack of due process and that it's a slippery slope for states to go down.
So I have to call them like I see them when it comes with the Constitution. I don't think we want to go down the road where one bureaucrat in a Secretary of State's office can take somebody off the ballot and take away the opportunity for people to make a judgment.
However, DeSantis says that if the roles were reversed and another candidate were kicked off the ballot, he doesn't think Trump would be coming to anyone else's defense. In Omaha, I'm Connor Hendricks reporting.
You can watch the full town hall with DeSantis on our website at kcrg.com. We've also requested similar interviews with Nikki Haley and Donald Trump.
In the meantime, we want to go back to the story of President Trump attending a hearing today in the D.C. Circuit Court. His attorney, one of his attorneys, Alina Habba, joins me now. Alina, good to have you with us. Welcome. Always great to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you, Martha.
So tell me a little bit about the immunity argument that was made in the court today. We saw the president come out. We heard from him that he believes that he has complete immunity. And yet some of the questions that we heard from the three judge panel, I should say, were surrounding whether or not that is an absolute situation, because they brought up a number of different instances and asked, would that provide immunity for a president? In other words, if it has to do with an election and arguing an election, does that fall under the immunity that we've seen prior presidents get for national security actions that they have taken? And the word that we've gotten from attorneys watching this is that they are not sure this D.C. court is going to go along with the argument that in this situation the former president is immune. What was your takeaway from what you heard in there today?
I've argued presidential immunity, Martha, ad nauseum, because I represent the most targeted former president in American history. I can tell you right now, absolute immunity, or what we call presidential immunity, is an immunity that exists to not only protect presidents, but protect Americans. And that was the arguments that we heard today. If you all of a sudden change an immunity that has been in place forever, that has been in place for very good reason, then how are presidents to protect the country? How are presidents to speak to the press and address the nation when they're afraid of defamation in civil claims, when they're afraid of criminal charges for having military take action against our enemies? It is hypothetical after hypothetical of extreme situations that are not the current situation. That's what I heard today. And I think our counsel did a great job of presenting what has already been established law. Presidents have to perform in their duties with absolute immunity from claims, because while they are sitting in president, Martha, it is not just, and I want to explain this in plain English, I always try and do that for non-lawyers, it is not just acts within his employment as the sole member of the executive branch. It is also for acts in the outer perimeter. It is for things, decisions he has to have discretion to make. If you have no discretion, then why are you elected as the president of the United States? That is the bottom line. The president was the president. He should be afforded immunity. And frankly, if the D.C. court does not make that decision, that would be mind-boggling to me, to be honest.
So how long, tell me about the time frame, because obviously all of this is layered in an election year. This will likely go to the Supreme Court, and their decision is likely to have bearing on a number of these cases. So what do you expect in terms of timing, and do you think it's going to be delayed, and for how long?
Well, let's not be twisted on why we have a timing issue. There really isn't a timing issue. The only issue is the one that the Democrats have created because they're concerned about losing in 2024. So they've created this epic proportion of rush. It's a consistent rush. It's putting pressure on the Supreme Court. It's putting pressure on these circuit courts to rush to decisions because they create a sense of urgency that frankly does not exist but for the fact that they are losing in the polls. So we are looking at this hectic rush. However, if you look at the decision with Jack Smith in the Supreme Court recently, they are calling them out on it. The rush to ruin an election is not, frankly, a rush at all. It is an urgent election interference claim that they've all colluded to do, in my opinion, and I've seen it time and time again. Presidential immunity is a slam dunk argument. If this case is not decided the way I think, frankly, the law states it should be, then yes, it will go to the Supreme Court. They will probably have to rush a decision because I'm sure prosecutors that we've seen that are Soros-backed will rush it. It's unfair, frankly, to the Supreme Court that they're being put in this position, but the law is very clear, and I think it's an easy decision to make.
All right, talk to me a little bit about the situation in Georgia and the revelations that surround the appointment of a prosecutor, a close relationship between the two. We heard the former president talk about this a bit today. He thinks that this essentially makes the Georgia case one that has to fall apart based on this. Explain your take.
My take is very much the sentiments of the president. I will say that these are obviously allegations that, if proven true, are extremely troubling and do create an ethical problem for Fani, for, frankly, the entire office. If a prosecutor's office is tainted by political animus, which we already know it has, and then they're tainted by taking taxpayer dollars and going on vacations, if those allegations are true and she's hiring people that she is sleeping with and putting them in positions to attack a political enemy, I can't even begin to start on where ethically that is problematic, let alone let's go to the case, which we know has no merits, but was obviously motivated by a group of people that have ill intent. So we've already known that. If these allegations, though, against Fani are in fact proven, she's going to have a problem on her hands, ethically, personally, and frankly for this case.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see how that develops. I just want to ask you one more question about Jack Smith, because the president earlier today said that there were real concerns about the viability of his bringing this case in the first place and whether or not he is a constitutionally appointed special counsel with valid precedent. Explain that.
Sure. Special prosecutors, just so you understand, are supposed to be independent counsel. They are not supposed to be independent counsel that is brought on solely to go under against a political campaign or a political opponent, the leading opponent. A lot of constitutional issues here exist. Ethical issues, again, exist. As we've seen, all of these people, they report to AG Garland, right? But they also automatically report to Biden. So let's not forget that. The real person that holds the strings to all these puppets is the current president of the United States. And we keep talking about Soros backing, but let's not forget about Democrat backing. Let's not forget about Washington backing. We are not supposed to have that. They're supposed to be independent. They are not supposed to be individual private sector individuals like we've seen with Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, the same thing. They brought somebody who has ties to Hunter, ties to the Biden family. That is not special counsel. That is not independent counsel. The definition itself is not that. So we're going to see challenges, I'm sure, to that. I think this is really making America sad. I think it's making the American public concerned for their safety, for the integrity of the justice system. And I hope for the sake of our children that we can correct it. And I don't think we can with this administration.
Yeah, we see the challenges to putting the former president on the ballot in a number of places around the country. So far, the candidates that we have spoken to say that they want to run against the former president without these impediments in the way and let the American people decide. So we'll see where that goes. Alina Habba, thank you very much. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, Martha.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Former President Trump has formally asked the Supreme Court to overturn the Colorado Supreme Court's landmark ruling and reinstate him on the state's 2024 presidential ballot after he was barred on the basis of violating the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause. The Colorado Supreme Court has no authority to deny President Trump access to the ballot, Trump's attorney wrote in the petition. By doing so, the Colorado Supreme Court has usurped congressional authority and misinterpreted and misapplied the text of Section 3. The deadline to finalize Colorado's presidential primary ballots, however, is Friday. Now, it's unlikely the Supreme Court will resolve Trump's appeal before then, meaning that Trump will likely appear on the ballots since the Colorado ruling was put on temporary hold.
Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. weighed in on Trump's removal from the ballot. Let's see what he had to say.
I've been outspoken. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump's, and that's why I'm running against him. But I think it's I've been outspoken about criticizing the Colorado decision and the Maine decisions because, we have a democracy in this country. We don't have a banana republic. At least we're not supposed to. People ought to be able to vote for who they want to vote for. I don't want to beat Donald Trump. I believe that I can beat him in an election and that I can beat him in a debate. And but I want to do that fair and square. I don't want the playing fields slanted. I don't want to have an election where you get rid of a guy who, a large percentage of the American public want as their leader, and you're going to leave those people feeling angry and frustrated and justifiably so. I've read the opinions. I don't see how they can stand judicial, Supreme Court scrutiny. I don't think you can get. Donald Trump has not been convicted of leading an insurrection. Maybe he did it. But, he hasn't been charged with it. He hasn't been convicted of it. So you can't really, I don't think it's fair. I don't think there's due process in punishing him for a crime that he was never convicted of.
Yeah, I really appreciate those comments from RFK Jr., not surprisingly. Frankly, I wish Joe Biden had said the same thing about his opponent. I think that would be very magnanimous. RFK Jr. wants to defeat Donald Trump and Joe Biden. He wants to debate them. He's doing well in the polls, topping 10% recently. That's very notable for a third-party candidate. We should probably spend more time at some point talking about his ballot access issues. I think we've had one of his surrogates on, Tony Lyons, to discuss them. We should go further into them because he's going to have some trouble himself getting on because the rules are very unfair to third-party candidates. I'm not faulting him or his campaign for that. It's the deep flaws in our system that is designed to protect the two-party duopoly. But yeah, I mean, he kind of outlines my own thinking about the decision. It is not to acquit Donald Trump of wrongdoing relating to the election or relating to January 6th, but just to point out that this is a subjective judgment somewhat, or a judgment that hasn't been rendered by a court fully of due process on whether Trump's actions, criminal though they may be, although that hasn't been proven yet either, are they criminal first? He's been charged, not convicted. And then are they, even if they're criminal actions, do they constitute an insurrection, is not a question for a unelected Secretary of State to arbitrarily decide.
Yeah, my objection here is only to the fact that I don't agree. I don't agree with Trump, and I don't agree with RFK Jr. that the Colorado court doesn't have the authority. They have the authority to apply the constitutional rule against insurrection, just like they would have the authority to say a 12-year-old can't run for president, or someone from Sweden can't run for president. Arnold Schwarzenegger can't run for president. But what the problem is that determination requires a finding of fact that has not, in fact, happened. Everybody is treating this like it's sort of a summary judgment posture. And in a summary judgment scenario, it is reliant on there being some clear, non-factual, indisputable facts on the record that you can make a decision on. You know, do we have a contract where I was owed this much money and this is the check that you paid and the check doesn't correspond to the money that was owed? We don't need a whole trial to figure that out. We can make a ruling in a pre-trial stage. This is a very different scenario where what is being alleged is a multi-week scheme that has over a dozen co-conspirators who are going to be called to testify to Donald Trump's complicity in all of this. It is very difficult for me to imagine that unless you're just looking at the fact of 1/6 and saying, oh yeah, he tweeted these and these people came to the Capitol and therefore that's an insurrection. Only with that mindset could you say that I'm going to be able to find that he in fact has satisfied the law here. And I think that's obviously what's going on. People are calling the acts of 1/6 the insurrection, which has always been the weakest part of Trump's case.
Shanna Bellows has very much leaned into that in her, I mean, in the documents herself, and then in her responses when asked about it on CNN and other places, has basically said, well, look at 1/6. There was violence on 1/6. That fulfills the criteria of the insurrection. But as we've pointed out, time and time again, you really have to dig into the scheme that went on in the weeks before. Associates wanting to forge documents, hold meetings at improper times,
meetings,
those kinds of things. Where I think Trump is going to have a very hard time. Because he's going to be up against dozens of people flipping on him. You may think that's totally unfair, but that's frankly just how the justice system works, and criminal masterminds have gone down for RICO-style things all the time, and Trump's going to be in quite a bit of jeopardy because of that. Now, I don't know, and I'm skeptical that is also what is meant by insurrection. But again, we're getting into a subjective kind of what does insurrection mean to you, that ultimately we need some kind of court body to weigh in on.
Right. Yeah. Well, meanwhile, a new investigation from House Democrats finds Trump received millions in payments from foreign entities while he was still president. Let's watch the news break on MSNBC.
Breaking news from Capitol Hill. There are new documents, they come from House Democrats, showing former President Donald Trump received nearly $8 million from 20 different foreign governments while he was in office. I want to bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. What more can you tell us, Ryan?
Well, Chris, I just left a briefing from Democrats on the House Oversight Committee where they gave us this report. It's a 156-page exhaustive report that details only 2 years of the Donald Trump presidency, which they outline millions of dollars in payments that flowed directly from foreign governments into the various businesses that were controlled by Donald Trump and his associates. And now it's important to keep in mind that while Donald Trump was president, he did not do what other previous presidents have done and either divested his business assets outside of government or stepped down from the boards and stepped down from positions of authority in these businesses. Instead, he chose to remain involved in them. And even though his children did run these businesses, he was still directly involved or had knowledge of the day-to-day business activity that many of these different associated entities were doing while he was in office.
So according to the New York Times, among the countries patronizing Mr. Trump's properties, China made the largest total payment at $5.5 million to his business interest. Saudi Arabia was the second largest spender, shelling out more than $615,000 at Trump World Tower and Trump International Hotels. It does seem like these kinds of arguments were made in the past. I think when he was running in 2016, that there was an opportunity for all these pay-to-play schemes, and he chose to not put up a Chinese wall, no pun intended, between him and some of these entities the way that people recommended, or Carter famously gave up his peanut farm. But even if you think
Trump had
these
a lot
are,
more than a peanut farm. Right? I mean, frankly, his business empire was so sprawling and so all around the globe, and he decided to remain in charge of it. There was no way to avoid this happening, given that he had decided not to
but you can,
step down.
if you want to keep your business interests, I think that's perfectly legitimate. You work your whole life for that, but then maybe you don't get to be president. And don't we expect some level of sacrifice from the people who lead our country to not be so easily entangled in these kind of pay-to-play schemes? Now, you can say that this is superficial, not you, but
I'm not saying it's superficial at all.
One could say that this is a de minimis infraction, but given that Republicans have spent the last few years doggedly trying to make a direct connection between Donald Trump and for his foreign business interests through his son as proxy. I don't know. Sorry, Hunter, what did I say?
You said Donald Trump again.
Sorry, Hunter Biden.
But I knew exactly what you meant. Or we can finish each other's sentences.
Yeah, that's right, Robbie. But if you're trying to do it via Hunter Biden, I mean, how can you argue against when you think it's a big deal for his son to be a proxy, for Donald Trump to be himself entangled in this way?
Right, and by the same, by the exact same token, how can Biden sympathetic mainstream media people be outraged about this and uncurious about the level of Hunter Biden influence peddling going on? The correct response is that there's tremendous corruption throughout our political system, and both parties and families are at fault.
With all due respect, the difference is that despite the Republicans' best effort to find something, there has been no smoking gun connecting any of Hunter Biden stuff with Joe Biden. So that is the substantive difference. You can say that you care about this kind of corruption, and you would care if they actually found the smoking gun with Hunter Biden, but that's still up in the air as compared to what is being described here in the New York Times.
Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous level of verifiable influence peddling on Hunter Biden's part.
Right.
Whether it violates any law has not been established, and whether it makes Joe Biden guilty of any law.
Yeah.
Although this is also, I don't know if this violates some law. They should be prosecuted for it. But unfortunately, the check on this kind of corruption is maybe just ultimately the voters. So they can decide whether they don't want to reward Donald Trump or Joe Biden for these kinds of behaviors. More Rising right after this.
Your uncle, John Kennedy, in 1961, during his inaugural speech, said one of the most famous lines, which is, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." But yet it seems like the trajectory that we're on is more so what can we get from the country. Do you think we need to become more aligned with what your uncle's vision was for America?
Yeah, I do. And, part of it is an orchestrated polarization, and also the stratification of wealth in our country. We've had policies going back to 1980 that have concentrated wealth, shifted wealth to the upper levels. And COVID was the last kind of trauma that did that. In 500 days, we created a billionaire a day, and we shifted $4 trillion upward. And so we now more look like the profile of what we would call a third world or developing nation, which has, this oligarchy above and then widespread poverty below. And, I was in Detroit yesterday on the picket line, and the CEOs of General Motors gets 400 times the median income of the middle class. That would have been a scandal in my uncle's time. And social scientists and economists and historians will all tell you that kind of economic configuration is too unstable to support democracy sustainably. And what happens is that one of the political parties becomes the party of the oligarchs, since increasing the wealth of billionaires is not a potent vessel for populism. They need to deceive, they need to fix elections, they need to tamper with the system and propagandize in order to maintain their power. And that barrage of lies polarizes societies and makes them feel like they're not part of the same community. And then there's also, I think, orchestrated polarization, which we see happening with both the Democratic and Republican Party, who are run by the same funders, funded by the same donor base. Part of my candidacy is to try to find things that unite Americans so that we can focus on what's really important, which is going over the castle wall and taking our country back.